I need a husband. Tonight. My only option.
There's one condition.
I need a husband. Tonight. You're my only option. There's one condition. It was 2 a.m. in the back alleys of Yujiro, and the rain had settled in like it owned the place. In front of a 24-hour print shop buzzing under a single flickering fluorescent light, a woman stood with her back pressed against a convenience store window. She was holding a stack of freshly printed documents that were now completely worthless. Her name was Aid. Born in Lagos, Nigeria, she'd spent 5 years clawing her way through Seoul art curator by title, survivor by necessity. When the scholarship dried up, she worked odd jobs. When the odd jobs dried up, she chased down patrons. The one thing she'd managed to hold on to through all of it was her visa. The one thing keeping her in this country. And tonight, that was gone too. It came as a text. Sender, the executive secretary of the gallery's primary patron. 2 lines. That was all. Director Lee passed away this morning. Gallery operations will be suspended until further notice. Aid pressed her forehead against the cold convenience store glass. That was all she felt, the cold. Not grief. Not panic. Just that hollow, in-between sensation you get right before everything catches up to you. 12 hours left on her visa. There's a way out. There has to be. Think. That's when she heard footsteps coming from deeper in the alley. A man, hands buried in the pockets of a black coat, walking steady toward the print shop like he had all the time in the world. Tall, broad shoulders, face like a closed door. He stopped in front of the convenience store, pulled a cigarette from somewhere, and put it between his lips, and the air around him shifted. Just slightly, the way it does right before a weather system rolls in. Years later, Aid would describe that moment as it felt like the door of a lion's cage swinging open. She looked at him, and without a single plan in her head, she opened her mouth. I need a husband. Tonight. You're my only option. The cashier inside looked up from the register. A stray cat froze on the curb. But the man didn't flinch. He exhaled a slow stream of smoke, looked her over once head to toe, unhurried, and then spoke in a voice so low it barely cleared the rain. Me? You're the only one in this alley. You know what kind of person I am? No. Does it matter right now? For the first time, Jae-hyuk actually looked at her. She was shaking, but her eyes weren't. That bothered him, that gap between the trembling body and the steady gaze. In his entire life, he'd never met anyone whose eyes held still while the rest of them fell apart. There's one condition. I'm listening. Find something for me. Something I've been looking for. You do that, I'll handle the rest. This is a terrible deal, but I don't have a choice. Aid held out her hand. Jae-hyuk stared at it for a moment. If she knew who he was, he thought, she would never have done that. But it was exactly that, her not knowing, that made his hand move. Why am I taking it? 2 a.m. In the Yujiro alley. The rain swallowed the sound of the handshake whole. The man's name was Kong Jae-hyuk, the quiet force behind an organization that had a firm grip on Yujiro and the northeastern corridor of Seoul. Ade had no idea. If she had, she never would have spoken to him. But she didn't know, so she did. And because she did, this story began. There's a painting. It was in the gallery you worked at. I need you to find it. A painting? It went missing 3 days before Director Lee died. You were the curator there. You know that place better than anyone. Aid ran the numbers in her head. Strange deal. Stranger man. But no options. She lifted her chin and looked him dead in the eye. If I find it, you can actually fix this? When I say I'll do something, I do it. The rain thinned. The alley went quiet, just the two of them, and whatever was hanging in the air between them. Aid put out her hand again. Jae-hyuk looked at it. Then he took it. Cold fingers, but steady, which, for some reason, she hadn't expected at all. There was no contract, no paperwork, no notary, no fine print, just a handshake in a rain-soaked alley, and a deal neither of them fully understood. But the next morning, Aid's phone buzzed with a text. Visa extension application submitted. Processing time 90 days. He actually did it. She read it 3 times. Then she looked out the window. Seoul's sky was embarrassingly blue. She felt like she could breathe again. But the feeling didn't last, because nothing in her life had ever been fixed this fast without some kind of catch attached to it. Either this man had serious pull, or she'd just walked into the most well-laid trap of her life. Find the painting first. Figure out everything else later. Aid headed to the gallery. It was the day after Director Lee's death, so the building was locked in that particular kind of quiet, not peaceful, just empty. A security guard was posted at the entrance. She flashed her curator's ID. He hesitated, then let her through. She went straight to the storage vault and started cross-referencing inventory lists against physical pieces. Once, twice, a third time. One was missing. A canvas with no artist name, no title, just a catalog number. 60 centimeters wide, 80 tall. Intake record showed it had arrived 3 days before Director Lee's death. No outgoing record existed. Came in 3 days ago. Gone in 3 days. She pulled up the intake form and checked the signature line. 2 signatures. Director Lee's, and next to it a second name. Scratched out. The crossed-out name sat in her head like a splinter. Aid requested access to the internal CCTV footage. The system showed 3 days' worth of storage vault recordings deleted. All of it. Clean gone. She sat down and let that sink in. This wasn't a lost painting. Someone had taken the time to erase every trace of it. Director Lee, what exactly were you hiding in there? Her phone rang. Jae-hyuk, find anything? The security footage is gone. 3 days wiped, and one of the intake signatures was scratched out. This isn't just a missing painting, a pause on the other end of the line. It had a texture to it, not the pause of someone surprised, but the pause of someone who already knew and was deciding how much to say. Keep looking. You're going in the right direction. Right direction. This man already knows something. He knew it before he ever called. On her way out, Aid stopped by Director Lee's private office. The drawers had already been gone through someone had been there before her, and they hadn't been careful about hiding it. But on the wall behind the desk, a corner of the wallpaper had lifted. Just barely. Aid pressed it with her fingertip. Something was behind it. An envelope. Old, soft at the edges from years of sitting in the dark. Inside one photograph. Black and white. 2 people. One was a young Director Lee. The other was a woman standing beside him. The moment Aid saw her face, her lungs stopped working. That's my mother. There was a date stamped on the back. Seoul, 1994. 2 years before Aid was born. Aid called Jae-hyuk. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost misdialed. We need to meet. Right now. Where are you? Anywhere. Just now. Please. He named the convenience store. That same spot in the Yuljiro alley. She ran. When she got there, he was already waiting, standing in the same spot as the night they'd met. Like he'd never really left. She shoved the envelope at him. He pulled out the photo and looked at it. His expression shifted. Only slightly. But Aid caught it. You knew, didn't you? You knew about my mother. Jae-hyuk set the photo down slowly. Then he lifted his head and looked at her. That look again, the one she'd noticed the first night. The look that didn't belong to a stranger. The night you walked up to me, I already knew who you were. Wind moved through the alley. The envelope trembled in Aid's hand. Something in her chest tilted a slow, sickening shift, like the ground adjusting under her feet. It hadn't been a coincidence. Not from the very beginning. She felt that truth settle into her bones. Aid didn't sleep that night. Seoul. Her mother's face in a black and white photograph. A scratched-out signature. A vanished painting. The pieces churned in her head without ever connecting. Her mother, Yoonj, had died when Aid was 10. An illness, they said. She had never once mentioned going to Korea. Not once in all the years Aid had known her. And now, the fact that Aid had ended up here, that she'd applied to that specific gallery, that her whole path had led to this exact alley. It all felt wrong in the way that only things that were planned feel wrong when you finally see them. Was coming here my choice? Or did someone lay this road down for me? 4 a.m. She picked up her phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. There were too many things she needed to ask Jae-hyuk, but she needed to find some of the answers herself first. First thing the next morning, Aide got her hands on the gallery's full employment records dating back to 1993, the year Director Lee opened the place. She ran her finger down the list, name by name, year by year, until her hand went still. Intern curator, Ilga Adeyomi, Nigerian national. Mom worked here. Her mother had worked in that gallery the same year the photo was taken, and by the end of that year, the record cut off no reason listed in the departure field. Just blank space where an explanation should have been. Aide screenshotted the entry and sent it to Jae-hyuk. His reply came fast. Too fast. Let's meet tonight. She set her phone down and thought about that. He always answered too quickly. No one responded that fast to things they were learning for the first time, which meant he'd known about this too, had known how much, and for how long, and had still let her go digging on her own. He'd chosen a small Japanese restaurant tucked into the back of the Yojiro alley. He was already there when she arrived. She sat down, slapped the screenshot on the table, and looked at him. My mother worked here. You knew that? I knew. Since when? Since the day you submitted your application to the gallery. Aide focused very hard on breathing evenly. Rage was rising, the slow, quiet kind that doesn't make noise. Instead of throwing her water glass at him, she asked the next question. So, from the very beginning, I was walking into your trap. He set down his chopsticks, looked at her, didn't answer. That silence was worse than anything he could have said, not a denial, not a confirmation, just the silence of a man measuring how much truth to give, and in what order. Is that what you think it was? What else would you call it? He glanced out the window at the alley, the late crowd drifting through, the neon signs bleeding into the wet pavement. When he looked back at her, something in his face had shifted by a degree or two. Your mother was forced out of that gallery. She didn't leave, she was pushed out. And the reason why is inside that missing painting. He started talking. His father, he said, had been Director Lee's business partner back in 1994. They'd jointly acquired a painting, one that became the subject of a long, ugly dispute over who actually owned it. His father died when Jae-hyuk was 12. He left one instruction behind: find the painting. Jae-hyuk had been tracking it for over a decade. Then, one day, a new curator's name appeared in the gallery's hiring records. Adeyomi, the same last name as the intern from 1994. I was going to use you. In the beginning, yes. In the beginning. Aide sat with those 3 words. And now, he didn't answer. But this silence was different from the others, shorter, and somehow much heavier. Like something was pressing against the inside of it, trying to get out. Let's take a step back and look at these two for a second. Jae-hyuk had been carrying his father's last wish for over 10 years. Finding that painting wasn't a choice. It was an obligation that had swallowed up most of his adult life. But from the moment Aide walked up to him in that alley, something in the framework started cracking. And Aide? She'd spent her whole life not knowing there was a road laid out beneath her feet. A daughter chasing her mother's secret. A son chasing his father's last word. 2 people who thought they were hunting the same painting, when really, they'd been walking toward each other all along. The story doesn't truly start until right now. After leaving the restaurant, Aide went dark for 3 days. No contact with Jae-hyuk. She needed to sort through what she knew before she could ask the right questions. She dug back into the gallery's storage records, 1994 intake logs, transactions involving works by unknown artists, Director Lee's overseas wire transfers. The picture was getting clearer, one piece at a time. On the morning of the 4th day, an unknown number texted her phone. Stop looking for the painting. Keep going, and your visa problem will be the least of your worries. A threat. She screenshotted it and forwarded it to Jae-hyuk. His reply came slower than usual, a full 10 minutes before her phone rang. Where are you right now? A cafe near the gallery. Stay there. Don't move. He showed up 20 minutes later. Not alone, 2 men trailing behind him, keeping a loose perimeter. Jae-hyuk slid into the seat across from her and dropped his voice low. One of Director Lee's inner circle knows where the painting is. They've started moving. Why are they threatening me? I don't know anything. It's not that you don't know enough. It's that you've gotten too close. Aid set down her coffee cup. She turned that phrase over too close. Close to the painting or close to something else. Jae-hyuk's face was as unreadable as ever, but something in his eyes had changed. There was more in them than there'd been that first night in the alley. More weight, more something she didn't have a clean word for yet. Is this man actually worried about me right now? That afternoon, Ade went back to the gallery alone, over Jae-hyuk's very firm objections. In the deepest corner of the storage vault, on a shelf that had never once appeared in any inventory list, a wooden frame was leaning against the wall with its face to the plaster. She pulled it out. The canvas was turned backward. She flipped it around. A painting, abstract red and black tangled together across a 60 by 80 canvas, violent and deliberate at the same time. But the second Ade saw it, something strange happened. It didn't feel unfamiliar. It felt like something she'd seen before, in a place she couldn't name. She checked the back of the canvas. A signature. Eunga Adeyomi. My mother painted this. Ade stood there for a long time. Why had her mother's painting been buried in the back of this vault? Why had Director Lee kept it hidden for 30 years? Why had someone wanted it to disappear? The questions hit all at once, piling up faster than she could sort them. Footsteps behind her. Jae-hyuk. He'd followed her in, of course he had. He stood beside her and looked at the painting without saying a word. Just looked for a long time. Ade watched his profile from the side. Your father knew about this painting, didn't he? He knew it was hers. He knew. He knew exactly whose it was. Then why didn't you just tell me? Jae-hyuk pulled his eyes away from the painting and looked at her. That crack she'd been seeing in his face, the one behind all the stillness, was wider now. He looked like someone who'd been holding something at arm's length for years and was finally losing his grip on it. Because I was afraid if I told you, you'd leave. The storage vault went very quiet. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once. Ade took her time with what he'd just said, turned it over slowly, checking every side of it. Ade hugged the painting to her chest and looked straight at him. I fell for you. Not because of the visa, just because of you. Jae-hyuk went still. In his life, he had heard a lot of things said to him, threats, negotiations, flattery with an agenda attached. But not this. Nothing like this. No angle. No ask. He looked at her for a long time. Then he opened his mouth. I set a trap, and I was the first one to fall into it. Ade laughed. It was a small sound, but it bounced off the walls of the vault in a way that surprised both of them. Jae-hyuk heard it and thought just once. Clearly that he wanted to keep hearing that. Look at that! He can actually be funny. The light flickered again. The distance between them got a little smaller. Outside the vault, an evening breeze was moving through the Yuljiro alley. On the canvas against Ade's chest, the reds and blacks her mother had painted 30 years ago glowed quietly under the fluorescent light. The day after the painting was found, things started moving fast. Director Park, one of Director Lee's closest inner circle, showed up at the gallery with a lawyer in tow, claiming ownership. His argument, anything discovered in the storage vault was gallery property by default. Ade didn't budge. Have you checked the artist's signature? Eunge Ediomi. That's my mother's name.
전체 대본을 선택하신 후 성우를 적용해 주세요.
Then bring me the acquisition contract. I'll read it right now. Director Park's face went tight. There was no contract if there had been. He would have led with it. Ade knew that. She'd spent years learning exactly how this gallery operated, and she knew what it looked like when someone was bluffing with nothing behind them. No contract, which means this painting was being held here illegally from day one. That afternoon, Jae-hyuk arranged legal representation for Ade. She started to refuse. He cut her off. No conditions this time. Ade looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded. The legal process moved quickly. Artist signature verification, the 1994 intake records showing inconsistencies, the missing acquisition contract. The three elements locked together, and the painting's legal ownership was transferred to Aid. Director Park filed an objection. He had nothing to back it up. The painting came out of the storage vault. For the first time in 30 years, sunlight hit it. Ade held it and stood there looking at it, her mother's red and black. Everything Yoonj had felt in this city in 1994, still alive on the canvas. The full truth came out along with the painting. In 1994, Yoonj had been working at the gallery as an intern when director Lee commissioned her to paint something for him. When she finished, he refused to return it. He planned to strip her signature, register it as his own acquisition. Yoonj protested. For that, she was fired. Jae-hyuk's father had witnessed the whole thing, the only person who had, which was why he'd made his son promise to find it. Return it to the person it belonged to. Jae-hyuk had carried that promise for more than 10 years. And now, finally, he'd been able to set it down in front of the woman it was meant for. Two fathers brought us here. Both of them. The visa issue resolved itself a week later, and not through Jae-hyuk. Aid received a formal invitation from a gallery in Seoul. The story of her mother's painting had gotten out, and with it, Aid's name. She was holding the official letter when she let herself smile alone, in her apartment, like a person who'd earned something. This one I made myself. She texted Jae-hyuk the news. His reply was 2 words. Good news. 2 words. She stared at them and thought this man really does not say much. But she was starting to understand that the less he said, the more it meant. And 2 words from him could hold more than a paragraph from anyone else. A few evenings later, Aid brought the painting to the gallery to start preparing for the exhibition. The space was empty, just her and the bare white walls, and the sound of her own footsteps. She hung the painting, stepped back, and stood there looking at it alone. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Jae-hyuk. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. He walked up beside her without a word and looked at the painting. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Under the gallery's lights, her mother's reds and blacks looked like they'd been waiting for exactly this to finally be seen properly, in a room meant for it. No conditions now? Jae-hyuk handed her one of the coffees. Then, for the first time, he reached out his hand first. Aid took it. The same hand from the Uljiro alley at 2 a.m., cold and steady in the rain. But warmer now. She was pretty sure about that. None. An evening breeze came through from the street outside. 30 years since Aid's mother had painted something in this city and disappeared from it. The painting was finally on a wall where it belonged, and in front of it stood her daughter, not alone this time. Someone was standing right beside her. Aid and Jae-hyuk were both people who'd been carrying old weight for a long time. Aid carried the absence of her mother. Jae-hyuk carried the last words of his father. That weight, both of it, walked into a rain-soaked alley in Uljiro at 2 a.m. and found the other half of itself. They didn't choose each other so much as a story that had been running for 30 years finally pulled them to the same spot. What does a story like this one leave behind? Maybe the roads that feel most like accidents, are sometimes the ones that were always meant for you. Aid reaching out to a stranger in a dark alley. Jae-hyuk spending a decade chasing a painting. Both of it looked like wandering, until it didn't. Old wrongs have a way of surfacing eventually, no matter how carefully they're buried. And the heaviest things we carry alone have a way of getting lighter the moment someone unexpected decides to carry them with us. Desperation doesn't always end in disaster. Sometimes it's exactly what it takes to knock on a door that's been shut for too long. The most unlikely people, in the most unlikely places, at the most unlikely hours, that's often exactly where the real story starts. This story is a work of fiction,